Welcome to my tasty art expedition, everyone. I'm Artifacts. If you're here to create realistic eyes like a pro, you've come to the right place. I'll take you step by step through my process, showing you things to avoid and how to correct them. Now, if this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my upcoming how-tos and art demos. Okay, let's get started. We've got a lot of great stuff to cover. I see a lot of drawings where people start off with the right idea, using an almond shape for the eyes and drawing a circle for the iris, even accounting for the pupil. The problem is this is overly simplified, and the iris won't show entirely unless the person is surprised or forcing their eyes open all the way. First, let's start off using lighter pressure with our pencil for the initial shapes. Now, the eye on the left is very level across, but a lot of eyes don't actually sit perfectly horizontally. They tend to angle up or down, so let's draw a guideline that allows us to follow that angle better. Then, lightly draw the shape of the eye. It typically starts off like an almond, but it can take on a more complex shape, so pay attention to your reference image. You can see how mine curves up and in towards the inside corner here at the bottom. Since the iris doesn't show entirely, we'll cut off our circle at the top a little bit. I'll get rid of the guideline now too, since we don't need it anymore. Next, the pupil is directly in the middle, and drawing crosshairs here will help us make sure we get it perfectly centered. Now, this is a really important part. Every eye will have a reflection, so always include it. It's one of the most impactful things you can add to your drawing, because without a reflection, eyes look lifeless. After erasing a little bit off the top of my pupil, I'll draw in the reflected light. By the way, this reflection is a complex shape, but it can be as simple as a single white circle. I'll shade in the pupil before moving on to the details in the iris. Okay, the iris isn't just a flat color like what you see on our drawing on the left. It has lots of lines and markings throughout. I like to start this process by drawing little V shapes around the pupil. At this point, I need to give the iris a light shading for the base and fill in the pupil with a darker pencil as well. I'm using a blender to smooth out the shading, but if you don't have one, you can use your finger or even a Q-tip. Now, the next layer for my iris will be these darker upside down V-shapes that surround our smaller ones. Notice how we're building all this depth here using firmer pencil pressure too. Now I'll go back around the perimeter of the eye and shade it darker, then shade little bumps along the inside edge. Finally, I'll draw lines all around, which all point back to the pupil in the center. To finish off the iris, let's shade it at the top where the eyelid is casting a small shadow. Now we can start darkening our lines around the eyelids and shade our eye on the right and left sides. Leaving the eyeball purely white, like our drawing on the left, makes the eye appear flat, which isn't the case. Alright, I see a lot of people oversimplify their eyelids as they continue to draw out their eyes. They'll draw perfect arcs and shade everything with even coverage, if they shade these areas at all. Again, it's important to look at your reference image since the eyelid lines often have a few angles to them. Once we have these lines to our liking, let's shade our eyelids darker towards the bottom since the light source comes from above. I'll also quickly sketch the basic shape for my eyebrow since I don't need to worry about shading here. Lightly shade around the eye, building up layers and blending everywhere. We can add texture to the skin using short, light lines. Next up are the eyebrows. These seem like they should be simple, but I'll admit they're tougher than they look. Usually people draw an outline for the eyebrow shape and shade it in. Sometimes they'll draw lines, but they usually draw them all in the same direction. For the eyebrows, we'll build up lots of layers of lines that point in slightly different directions. They mostly point up and angle out to the side of the head, and they angle out more the closer they get to the side. Keep adding lines and make them darker and thicker if they're on the side near the middle of the face. Every once in a while, blend the line some. While I have this darker pencil, I'll add more details all around, which helps us continue to build up depth with layers and contrast. The last thing we need to add are the eyelashes. Instead of rushing through and adding a few straight lines to the top eyelid, let's consider how the lashes are actually shaped. For the top eyelid, start with the pencil on the lid and gently flip your pencil up, making little curves that get thinner on the ends. Eyelashes also overlap and cross over each other, so be sure to change directions occasionally. Lashes on the bottom lid are similar, but they curve down. I'll keep these a little more simple too. Now that those are complete, lightly shade on the base of the lashes to fill them out a little more. Now for final details. You can use an eraser and lightly erase lines for added skin texture. Also, I highly recommend you invest in a white gel pen like this uni-ball SIGNO. You can pick one up for only a couple dollars and it makes a great finishing tool for all kinds of art. I'll use it here to touch up the reflections and add final details like light colored hairs. Well, I hope you enjoyed this instructional video and learned something with me today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.